Hey guys!
Hey!
Welcome to another episode of the Money Dilemma series. Today we have a very complex dilemma, and this one is, should we live closer to London with close proximity to family but be in lots of debt, mortgage debt, or move far outside of London, further up north, and be totally mortgage debt free, but be far away from family?
So this dilemma, by the way, we're using London because it's specific to the person who's going to be playing the audio in a second. But you can relate to this if you are living in a major city, okay, anywhere around the world. Should you stay somewhere super central, close to family, and all that, all the buzz and stuff, or should you move out and become mortgage free by buying a much cheaper property? Before we play the dilemma for you guys, just wanted to say this series is sponsored by sister brand Financial Joy Academy, a platform we created to help people on their wealth building journey, whether you're starting an online business or want to invest in the stock market or invest in property or in various asset classes. We do sessions like this where Mary and I essentially, one of the things we offer is these sessions where we answer questions in the form of coaching calls and actually debate them and talk about them to get an answer. Do you want to learn more about it? In addition to everything else we offer on that platform, such as courses, masterclasses, and so on, I'll link to it below and above. Right, let me play the dilemma and let's check it out and see what we can do for this person.
Hi Ken and Mary, I'm Holly from London. Here is my money dilemma. I live in a 2-bed shared ownership flat, just one stop from King's Cross, with my husband and 2 children of school age. Due to recent inheritance, we are considering the best options for our future. Our flat has recently been valued at $465,000. However, we are unable to sell it due to the current cladding situation affecting a number of London properties, which unfortunately has no end date in sight. We are considering paying off a lump sum so that we are left with a mortgage of just under $100,000. Doing this would reduce our monthly outgoings and would put us in a better position to potentially convert the property to buy to let for a future revenue stream. Doing this would generate a great income in the future, but it would mean that when we do relocate, we would need to be mortgaged again and potentially for more. Our long-term plan has always been a house with a garden. Where in the UK is the current question. Initially, we were thinking Surrey or Kent so we could be near family. This comes at a fairly hefty price, almost like for like, if not more, as our current flat valuation. However, having travelled around a little this Easter holidays just gone, it has become apparent that if we took the money we have in savings, we could potentially purchase a property for cash and be completely debt-free. This opens up a lot of financial freedom, but also means accepting we are on our own, somewhere new, knowing nobody as a family with young children, not even considering finding a school or way for me to commute part of the week to London for work. So, do we pay off some mortgage for immediate financial gains in the hope that we can generate future revenue by retaining our central London flat, but accept that we will need to mortgage for our relocation home? Or do we pay off some of the mortgage, sell the London property once the cladding situation is remedied, and find another way to generate income? Or do we relocate paying cash and be totally debt-free but know nobody? Thanks.
Wow.
Yeah.
What would you do about that? I mean, there's a lot to unpack there.
A lot.
What we thought we would do was actually to message Holly and ask for a fair bit more information because there's quite a lot there that we needed to just understand. Up on the screen is some more information which I'm going to be reading to you guys. So we sent her an email and asked a few questions. Mary and I said, are you the main breadwinner at home? Because she hadn't mentioned her husband. What do you do for work? Can you do your work in London from anywhere, or could it be like a hybrid? And so on. And also, how old are you guys? And roughly how much do you have in savings? Okay, so answer those questions, kind of fill some gaps. To which she then replied, hi guys, yes, I am the main breadwinner, she says. And we asked, does your husband also work? She says, at the moment, no. And this gets very emotional. She says, he was made redundant just before the pandemic. A month after, mum died, and so helped look after dad. Dad died in March 2020, and so he did childcare for lockdown 1. Then back in contract work before that finished. His last role finished just before his mum died in December 2021, so only a few months ago. So he wouldn't work again unless part-time, as we need childcare for the summer holidays. Our youngest can't go into camp and so on. let's just pause there for a second. I'm sure a lot of people can actually relate to this situation because it's very, very emotional.
It is. I think we were quite invested in this one.
Yeah.
They've gone through a lot in a short space of time. Whilst everyone's gone through lockdown, they've had to go through in a short space of time redundancy, death of 3 parents. It's a lot to go through in a short space of time, you know. When people think of inheritance, they're like, oh, lucky you, but no, actually, it's come at a cost.
And we're going to get to that inheritance part, but that's actually a really important point because here you can feel the emotional element of this because a lot of people, obviously, we've all been through a pandemic, and very sadly, a lot of people even watching this right now will have gone through a transition with their families, and they'll be, as part of that process, obviously not the ideal situation, but part of that process will be a transfer of wealth with some inheritance and so on. So first of all, I wanted to say our condolences go out to Holly, and go out to her husband, and actually go out to anybody else who's watching who's been through a bereavement or is going through a bereavement, because we know that these things happen. Absolutely. We actually had one with a family member only yesterday, so we know, we know what this feels like. But let's keep reading. She says she's an operations manager. She's been in the role since 2014. She works for a small company but a global business based in central London with great benefits. Okay, without going into much detail, she gets looked after in her role, which is great, okay? She's 38, her husband's 40. Here are the key numbers. We have roughly £345,000 in savings. Now, I should mention that comes mostly from the sale of her parents' assets, from the inheritance, from the very sad situation we just read about, okay? So it's not like money that they've just got, it's just like stuff that's happened for this money to kind of appear in their hands. Then she says, if we staircase is a process by which if you own a shared ownership property, you can acquire more of that property, you own more of it. If we staircase by paying cash and buying out the housing association who own the other share of the property, and by the way, guys, we're going to summarize this for you, so there's quite a lot of numbers and things to think about. By buying out a housing association for £279,000, then the remaining mortgage is 100k. She's got a mortgage of 100k on a property for which she owns a part of it. A housing association owns the remainder. If they want to buy the remainder out from them, they need to pay 279k. She says, we need to do this first step if we want to buy to let for future investments. The recent valuation for that flat in London is £465,000. And we're told it's near King's Cross, right, in London. So a really good location for a property. Monthly rental of the flat will be £1,700 a month. And if we put in her husband's name, there are tax benefits, but all such unknown quantity in terms of doing. It's such a good London location, but could income be generated another way, she's thinking. We need space, community, and kids who can enjoy independence as they get older, but unfortunately, living with our ghosts is a little hard now. It's also such an emotional decision. We hope you can feel that the same as well, because we've been so vested in this particular case. It's such an emotional decision as the money is from inheritance, and leaving Islington represents a true end to what has been. Can't wait for your feedback. Thanks, Holly. So that's the position. And then we will put up on the screen for you guys, just going to save time, a summary of this dilemma. So feel free at this stage of this video to hit pause and actually read the full summary without us having to read out every single line.
Okay, so there's a lot to take in with that dilemma. So Holly's asked 3 main questions.
Yeah.
So 1, do we pay off some mortgage for immediate financial gains in the hope that we can generate future revenue by retaining our central London flat, but accept that we will need to mortgage for relocation home? Or do we pay off some of the mortgage, sell the London property once the cladding situation is remedied and find another way to generate income? Or do we relocate, pay in cash and be totally debt-free, but know nobody?
Yes, that last bit about knowing nobody, that really hits, doesn't it? So it's like you can't have your cake and eat it. So it's like, how do you get to that optimal position where you are as close to being financially free as you can? One pathway to that being mortgage free, but at the same time maintaining the thing she's always had. Proximity to family, proximity to work, and all those various things.
Absolutely.
Yeah? So before to start unpacking this, why don't you just share, because we know that not all the technical terms in here, not everybody understands them. So first of all, let's talk about some of those technical terms. For example, shared ownership. What does this even mean? And that sort of stuff. So up on the screen is a simple summary for anyone who wants to know what shared ownership actually means. It's a way in which people who are, who've got maybe a small amount of deposit, who are not able to buy a property because they're a bit expensive, are able to buy and own a part of the property. Okay, we'll put up a summary. So please feel free to pause here and learn a bit more about shared ownership if you want to learn that. In addition, she talked about cladding. This is another big problem right now for people in the UK.
It's a major problem.
Major problem. And obviously we know, the Grenfell Tower disaster, all of those things obviously played out. Very, very sad events. But really what's come out of that is we've now got this crisis with people who have various flats with cladding issues and they are unable to sell those properties. So thanks to the BBC, there's a really neat summary of what cladding is and why there's a problem and that sort of stuff, which is currently what Holly, who's presented us with this case, is going through herself. But to answer her questions were, should she pay off some of her mortgage for immediate financial gains in the hope that they can generate some future revenue by retaining their central London property, but accept they will need to mortgage for a relocation home in the future? What do we think? Should she, that first scenario, should she even do that? Should she bother doing that?
So we said it's based on really two things, right? So if the cladding issue has been resolved, then there is one way of going about it. If the cladding issue has not been resolved, then there's another way of going about it. So let's assume in this situation that the cladding issue has been resolved, which means that she's able to staircase, buy the property outright, and then potentially use it as a buy-to-let.
Just to shed some more light.
And just unpack that a bit more.
Yeah.
What we're saying essentially is what she wants to do, which may not have been obvious in this message, but we've gone back and forth, so we know the bigger picture. They would like to potentially, the flat that they're in now, purchase it outright, and by doing so they'll need to pay fully the remaining that they have on the mortgage, which is
about
100k.
Yeah.
And then with staircasing, buy the extra 60% of the
value of the property.
Of the value of the property.
Which is 465,000.
Yes. With the hope of then remortgaging, change it to a buy-to-let, and then get the equity out of that to then purchase a property potentially
of their own.
Of their own somewhere else.
And just to add to that, because you explained that really well, just add to that. And the reason they're obviously doing that is because they want to, stating the pure obvious, they want to keep the London property as a source of income for the future, whilst also then seeking out a new place, a new home for the family that offers them the best case scenario, ideally with the least amount of debt.
Yeah, they would like a garden, their children to have their independence and more space for, a bedroom for each child. So we're saying if the cladding is resolved, then it's a bit more straightforward, right? It's kind of a bit more straightforward. It's should they move further away, right, and be mortgage free, debt free, or get a place closer to home. So what did we
just so we know what numbers we're playing with, because I know you went through that technicality quite quickly, but it's actually really important. When people staircase, you can staircase, you can in steps of about 10% from our understanding. But because she is using inheritance money to do this staircasing, she's not having to take a mortgage to do this staircasing. She is able to make that move a lot quicker. So she has 40% of the property right now. Property's worth 465,000. She do 40% of that. That's what she's got right now. Of that 40%, she owes 100k. There's a 60% owned by the Housing Association, which, as Mary clearly explained, she can staircase using her inheritance money to pay down some of that money. And she told us in this story that she would need to pay down 279,000, i.e. she need to pay the Housing Association to acquire the remaining 60%. So now she's fully staircased to 100% because she's using inheritance money. Again, I state that, not mortgaged money to do that. Also, she would need to pay off, like you said, the 100k debt. So let's say now that she's done all that and she's then done scenario one, which is she's staircased. Great, got 100%. Scenario two, she now needs to remortgage so that she's swapping the money she's put into the property with the bank's money, so she's able to take her money out. So we know banks lend up to 75% of the value of a property. So if we work that out, 75% of 465.
Give us the numbers.
So
348,000.
So that's what she would have, right? So I've just explained that, just kind of really state clearly what's going on.
Yeah.
So she would have about £348,000 after these set of transactions, where in the end she'll end up with a flat that she has 25% equity and 75% bank's money, and it's rented out, making £1,700 a month and making her some income. And then she now has this money to put into a new property. So that then brings us to her core question.
Yes.
Which is, should she use that money to buy outside London and be completely mortgage free? She mentioned Harrogate, which is up north. And again, I'll put up on the screen for you guys to see the average property values in Harrogate. We'll look this up for a semi-detached property. Or should she buy closer to London? So what would you say to that? What are the pros of buying Harrogate?
Okay, so many pros. Harrogate, we checked it out. It looks like a really beautiful town.
It looks beautiful,
It's
actually.
really picturesque.
Yeah.
And so with the unfortunate situation of hubby not working, they have this peace of mind. They're just
Huge peace
peace of mind that they don't have that huge debt to think about. Another pro is that it's an opportunity to start afresh. You know, there's been a lot of negativity in 2020, 2021. It's just
family
a clean,
bereavement,
fresh
all of
start.
that.
But it's not that far in that if you wanted to maybe visit family once a month or twice a month, the journey back into London is 2 hours?
2 hours, 45 minutes.
2 hours,
that is
45 minutes.
far, babe.
It
Not
is
being
actually
funny.
far. No, it is actually far. but
One
it's
way.
not
That's one way.
one way, yeah.
You know.
Okay, so what are the other pros?
No, hang on. But what you're saying is spot on.
Yeah.
So there's still that, but let's not forget the main thing, her job, right? She's the main breadwinner.
Main
for family,
breadwinner.
You know? So she's...
Exactly. But this is what I'm saying, peace of mind, because she is the main breadwinner.
Right.
Moving to Harrogate means that they don't have mortgage debt to think about.
True.
You know, and it's less pressure on her.
Yeah.
But then that's the pros.
And he doesn't have pressure to go and get a job.
Exactly. And then they've got the children that he can, look after.
And they've got better quality of life as a family. And even if he wanted to get a job, he can. And if anything, that makes them even wealthier.
Exactly. Part-time or not.
But there are considerations.
There are lots of considerations.
Commuting costs for her to consider.
Exactly. So she may be able to get a flexi work situation. But even then, commuting maybe even 2-3 times a week, 2 hours 45 minutes is actually quite a lot to think about. So yes, you've got the peace of mind that you don't have a mortgage, but are you prepared to do that commute twice a week? There's also the additional costs of that travel, but you would think that would be offset with the cheaper price and the property and the fact that they're mortgage free. That balances out.
Exactly. I think it's actually a really, really attractive proposition, right? But I think the one thing that really underpins it is her job, her work, are they prepared to be flexible? Because we've got hybrid working, and employers are much more open to employees, particularly in family situations and so on, particularly if they need to work from home and to do hybrid working.
Exactly.
So if her role does permit that, then that really changes the game, because it means that she can still earn what she's earning, that London salary, but have that arbitrage of living in Harrogate and having a much cheaper property to buy. Exactly. However, what's a con of doing that though?
I mean, personally, we would like to be close to family, wouldn't we? Because it's just nice to know that there's that proximity, even if we don't see them regularly, knowing that they are quite close to us is quite reassuring, isn't it?
Yeah.
Exactly. We like to have that close, support system around us. I think it's quite important, especially where they have young children.
3 and 6, age 3 and 6.
Yeah.
But saying that though, Mary and I have got friends who, like, our friend Jacques and his wife, they're South African, they live in the UK, they haven't got any support, right?
Yeah.
They live in Sevenoaks, a really nice part of town, but it's not London, and they often have a need for childcare and stuff, but they get by, they get on, they do their thing, so there's that bit as well. Is a question of, well, how badly do you want that level of financial freedom? And I think in Holly and her husband's case, they've had quite a lot they've gone through, and this idea of moving out is actually really, really compelling. But saying that though, if we were in your shoes, we wouldn't move that far out.
We wouldn't.
No. we wouldn't stay in London neither.
No, absolutely not.
So it's a question of finding that happy medium, that gap. Because, from the examples, so say you've done the complex financial transaction of what we talked about earlier, staircasing, having a property, remortgaging, all that stuff, getting the equity out. You have £348,000. Let's round that up to £350,000, okay? Now, you can get a good property. And Mary and I did some maths, right? So there's a family of 4, you're going to need probably a 4-bed, right? Because you're not looking to move anytime soon. And if you're looking in proximity to London, we can probably assume you get a decent property in a decent part of, a region like Kent or Surrey for £500,000. Now, which means if you've got 350k, you're buying a 500k property, you're pretty much, you've got around 70% of that property that you actually own in terms of equity, which means you're going to be getting a really good mortgage deal and that sort of stuff. But also, we looked at this from the perspective of future value appreciation. Yeah. Because there's really good value in living in proximity to London.
Exactly.
In properties appreciate.
They do.
Like with our house, it's funny, this year makes it 10 years since we bought this house we live in now. And it's doubled in value in those 10 years.
Exactly.
Which is just nice to know. You look it up, you're like, wow, my house is worth twice what it was. And when you work that out from a compounding perspective, for us, it works out to be about 7% annual growth rate compounding. And we looked into the UK, and we're going to put this up on the screen. The annual appreciation rate of property in terms of property prices across the UK on average is about 5.2 or 3% thereabouts. And in London, we looked this up specifically looking at the land registry records. It worked out to be around 5.33%. Again, we'll put this up on the screen looking at flats in London and how they've appreciated in value over the last 10 years. So anyway, looking at that and we're saying, okay, what we're really saying here is if we were putting ourselves in your shoes, right, and doing this as though we were in your shoes. First of all, we would do what we suggested earlier, which is actually assuming the cladding situation is going to be resolved, and this is a big question mark, we would go through the process of not actually selling the London property because we think it's in a great location. We would focus on trying to get that into a buy-to-let, going through that process we talked about. Lucky for you, I say lucky, but you know what I mean. Fortunately, you have the inheritance money to use as part of that transaction. We would then go through that process and do that.
And we know,
go on.
That you're likely to fetch £2,000 in rent.
1,700.
Yeah, £1,700 to £2,000 per month, which is actually quite a good source of income. So we definitely would not sell that London flat.
And after tax, obviously, all these things you have to think about tax and expenses and all those things. Given your husband's not working, he'll be at a much lower tax rate. If you did kind of a change in ownership, that sort of stuff, and he owned most of the property, you'd have him getting the income tax at a much lower tax rate and all those things. Okay, but in terms of where we would buy, we would look at commuter towns. We looked up examples of London commuter towns that are within that 500k kind of bracket. Okay, so you've got Red Hill in Surrey, 30 minutes by the fastest train to London. Season ticket though is expensive, it's £2,908 per year thereabouts. And the average house price in that area is £479,000. You've got places like Berkshire, you've got Hawley in Surrey. Do you want to just read those details?
Yeah, so fastest train to London is 28 minutes. That's not bad. Season price ticket, £3,468. That's very expensive. Ooh. We're assuming she wouldn't buy season ticket because she wouldn't be needing to travel all the time. Average house price is £394,749. So yeah, not bad.
And you've got other areas in Hertfordshire, like Stevenage in Hertfordshire. So the average house price is £317,686. Fastest train to London, 27 minutes. And again, your season ticket's £3,964. And that list carries on. You've got places Borehamwood, Reading. Reading's actually quite nice. My brother lives in Reading. And places like that. Reading, again, average price of £371,000, 25 minutes commute to London. At Hatfield, and it carries on. Essentially, what we're saying is there are places you can buy a property for £500,000 and get a semi-detached property, maybe a 4-bed for around £500,000.
Yes.
And if you're putting down 350k for that sort of property, then it gives you the best of both worlds in that, yes, you have a mortgage of about £150,000, and yes, it's not you being mortgage free, but you have the potential of that property rising in value about 5% every year, and also, over time you begin to pay down that debt quite quickly over time, depending on whether you're on repayment or interest only and so on.
Yes.
But all of this stuff we're saying is almost pinned on if the cladding situation is resolved.
Yes.
Which, if we're being honest, we don't know if it's going to get resolved anytime soon.
No.
Now, obviously, we want it to be resolved like yesterday already. But the truth is, what if it's not resolved anytime soon? Which brings us back to your core question, which you said, should you pay down some debt? Yeah? And Mary and I were thinking about it, and we thought, well, actually, rather than paying down some debt, we wouldn't actually do that straight away. What we would do instead is focus on staircasing. Because if you think about it, London flats are going up in value by about 5.4% thereabouts on average every year. So if you've got your flat at 465,000, add another 5% in the next 12 months, just playing around with simple maths, it's becoming more expensive for you to actually own that property the more you delay.
Exactly. And then you have inflation also that we're facing at the moment.
Yeah, general cost of living.
So we checked out the calculator, what's the name of the calculator?
The CAGR, compounding annual growth rate calculator.
Yeah.
Essentially just works out price changes for properties.
Exactly.
Yep.
And so, like Ken said, it would make more sense long term to staircase. That way they're paying off less. They owe less.
You're owning more of the property by staircasing, right?
Exactly. You're owning more of the property. You're owning more of the property, exactly, so that when it does come to maybe buying the property 100%, if you want to own 100% of the property, you're not owing as much.
Yeah, because if the price keeps going up and then later on you're like, well, actually, I now want to own more of that property, then obviously, you're paying a lot more, and that money you've got sitting in the bank might not have generated, the returns that match the increase in property prices over time. So to your question, should you pay down? We wouldn't really focus on paying down. Obviously, pay your mortgage and do what you might do normally. We'd focus instead on getting that staircasing process, the ball rolling.
Yes.
With the hope then that the cladding situation gets resolved and you can then go into full fly with trying to get it into a buy-to-let property and then beginning this whole process of trying to own your own property as a family.
Absolutely.
Wow. Guys, that feels like we've covered so much on this particular dilemma. It'd be really interesting to hear from you guys. There's a lot we've covered there. In your opinion, what should Holly do?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to hear from you guys. Put yourself in her shoes. What would you do? So we're not saying don't move out. We're saying move out, but just not too far up north. Find a nice middle ground. Look at other commuter towns which are closer to London, but not as far as Harrogate, where they can potentially buy a cheaper property, but have what they want. The garden, extra space so the kids can have their independence, and they're closer to family. So yeah, guys, it would be great to hear from you. What would you do? And are you currently facing this cladding situation where you want to sell or you don't know what to do? It'd be interesting to hear what you're going through too, guys, and how you're aiming to resolve it.
If you enjoyed today's video, we'd really appreciate it if you hit the like button, because that just tells us that you like this sort of video and this particular format of us doing these real life dilemmas. And I should mention, this is in no way us offering financial advice, okay? We are literally putting ourselves in Holly's shoes because we know there are people out there who are watching who might also be in these scenarios. So please don't take this as financial advice. Obviously, seek independent advice when you make your own financial decisions. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video. And as always,
in all things, be thankful and seek joy. Take care.
Take care, people.
Bye.
Bye.